Assembled company. We are rarely here on a Saturday night, but we are tonight because live from the World Storytelling Cafe in Marrakesh, courtesy of the British Council, we have the amazing Raymond Antrobus. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you can put your hands together, and undoubtedly everything will work as if clockwork. This is our fantastic opportunity. Thank you.
هذا الاخر يخدم نشوف لك سير لي الويفي الله يبارك سير لي الويفي لا قال لي تحت المكان ما عرفتش ما عنديش مشكل بغينا الناس يقدروا داكشي كان هنا خصها هنا الشتا جات واحد الشتا طاحت عليها ديك الفازه هذيك ما فيهاش ما تدخلش انا شحال اشدي نديرو الاتصال مع اش بالك على فاش اذا درنا الاشدي مع التلفازه الاخرى مع التلفازه الاخرى غادي يخدم هو دابا اش راه خصنا نبدلو البلاصه ديك لي بويط يلا صايب لها شويه في ما دخلش بلاتي راه خصني نرد البال هنا ترد البال هنا بغا يدخل الويفي غير السيده والكود شنو هو الكود نفس الكود ولا تشونجي نفس الكود راه عندهم الكود لتحت عرفتي فين تشاو واش يخدم ليك لا صافي لا شوف نعم يجيب الكود دابا صافي كونيكتي صافي داك اللي تخلي السيت ديالها لا سيت فين كاين ديك تدخل من السيت تاع ياك دخل على السيت كليك على السيت دخلها هي ولا تدخل لها اكسبتيها صافي شفتي كنتي شي حاجه مازال درتي شي عصير اكسبتي مالي فوالا يلا علي اكسبتي
John, where's Mike?
Say hello to John.
قول لي اطفي الميكروفون عبدو
I assume that there's some technical problems at the moment. We're just waiting for those to get sorted out.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Tony. Great. We all need to mute now, apart from Tony.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Lucy. Hi, John. How are you?
Good, thanks.
We're very good, thank you.
Hi, John.
Good to see you.
Raymond Antrobus does a lot of poetry about echoes. There's a big echo in the room.
So
Ah, great. There was some feedback from the speakers, and there still is. Mike, you look like you're in a car. Very good. They've turned down the feedback, so I think we'll just get on with it. Are you guys going to read from here? Yeah. If we take these lovely biscuits off here, there's a very good audience. Hello to everyone. And we love your cafe. It's fantastic. Raymond and Hafsa are going to take their seats. And then I'll ask you, John, if you can, we could hear through the speakers your introduction just now, but we couldn't see you. And we want to see you and hear you. So we're going to ask you to do it again in a moment. I'll give you the thumbs up when Raymond and Hafsa are seated, and I'll put the laptop down so that you can see them.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You're right, Ray. You're right. Just a few moments. We had a really good session at Qadi Ayad University this afternoon with the Faculty of Letters, and some of the keen students are with us here. So it's their first visit to the World Storytelling Cafe as well. Alan is here. Monique, Juanita from Education for All is here. Of course, Zuhair is ever present. I hope he's going to tell us a story later. Of course, he says. Great. So I hope you can see Hafsa. Raymond's just coming. Raymond has got an instant addiction to mint tea, to Moroccan mint tea. So
we understand that.
You understand that. Listen, I'm gonna say nothing more because I've said enough. You are good to go, and I hope you can see Raymond and Hafsa, and I hope you can hear us.
Indeed, I can.
So off you go.
So, ladies and gentlemen and assembled company, it's a very exciting time at the World Storytelling Cafe this evening because the British Council are in live and direct at the cafe, and they have with them the amazing poets Raymond, Antrobus and Bekri Lamrani, Hafsa Bekri Lamani, and sorry about that. We're just so proud to have you here at the cafe, and without further ado, I am handing over to you so you can speak direct to the cafe and to the world.
For very special invitation to Morocco about
Council around the International Day for Poetry. And I'd like to say that this International Day for Poetry was asked by us, Moroccan, by the Moroccan House of Poetry in Morocco in 1998. So we Moroccans gave the world an International Day for Poetry, and I'm very thrilled to meet Raymond, a real great poet. Thank you.
Floor is yours, Ray. I'm not going to do this. If you want me to do, I'll do a very quick introduction. Just, although the students have heard this, Alan, but I mean, we are thrilled post-COVID to have Raymond in Morocco for the first time, and it's one of our first face-to-face arts and culture events, following on the footsteps of the International Storytelling Festival. I've said this before to some people, but Raymond, you know, has been described in the UK as one of the most important young poets of his generation. He's won the Ted Hughes Poetry Award. He's won the Rathbone Folio Prize, and lots and lots of accolades from all the mainstream arts and culture media in the UK for his 2 volumes of poetry. We're delighted to have him here. We have had a very busy and packed program that has reflected one of the important issues in Raymond's poetry as a deaf poet and a person who devotes a lot of his time to the deaf community and to issues of deafness. So we've had a fantastic 2 days, one in Meknes at a deaf centre and one in Rabat. Was it yesterday? Yeah. Yesterday in a deaf centre. Today we spoke to some inspiring students at Kadi Ayad, and we're really, really pleased to be here at the World Storytelling Cafe to do this public event. So I'm just going to stop there and hand over to Raymond to do your stuff.
So what I'm just seeing now is, does this mean I have to sit down and read? Because people aren't going to see me if I stand up.
They won't see you if you stand up.
So I have to sit down. Okay, that's okay. I'll try and do that.
Unless I hold the laptop. It's the height thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What we could do is we can just flip it back like that.
Yeah. So should I be talking to you or should I be talking to him?
Talk to these guys, and then there is an online audience who will hear and see as much of you as they can, both of you.
Brilliant. Hello, world. I have no idea if anyone's watching, but if they are, great. Hello. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'm in such a daze. I'm like, kind of, where am I? I'm in Morocco. I've been asking your poems. I'm sitting here. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Talk to these guys.
Okay. Fine. Sorry. This is like, can we not know? Like, I'm almost overwhelmed with who I should be talking to. But I'll speak with you.
Got you.
Yeah. And I don't know about. Maybe you can move this.
So I hope they can hear it as well.
Can I get confirmation?
Can somebody give me a thumbs up? Yeah, there's a thumbs up. There's a thumbs up.
We can hear you, Raymond, perfectly.
Oh, okay.
If I stood up, can people see?
Yes, it's great. We can see you clearly and hear you.
Cool. Good. I'm just gonna. Yeah. Okay, so I'm still like kind of stunned, but I'm here. I'm here. Cool. Hold on. I need to or something like a little bit, right? So I guess I need to sorry. Maybe that. But yeah. I think it would be great if we just like those are often get yeah.
Technical adjustments happening.
So yeah, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for your patience. Thank you, British Council, for having me here. I've been told a bit about this storytelling center and the story of it and how this is one of the first live events that you're doing here. It's amazing. A friend of mine was here recently, Steph Townsend, who goes to a storyteller. I know he's also deaf, and he was invited in here to. It almost feels like a continuation of that. I'm just gonna start, I think, with a one which I performed earlier actually in university. Where I attended, met some of the peers, English students, poets, writers in their own right, for sure. Readers as well. So one of the reasons why this is it's difficult for me to talk right now, because I'm in a very intense few days, and I'm like absorbing a lot of stuff. I spent first 2 days in 2 different deaf schools, and I've been trying to pick up a little bit of Moroccan Sign Language. Last 7 years, I've been going to deaf schools, deaf centers all over the world, all over the Caribbean, over parts of Africa, parts of Europe. British Council have been behind some of those trips as well. And what I'm trying to do is globalize my understanding of deafness. And one of the most consistent struggles that I see is struggles for access and support for not even just deaf people, but people with all kinds of disabilities, people with neurodivergence. And the conversation and the wider conversation around disability, I think, is one that isn't just vital, it's a human rights issue that we are dealing with. It's even here in Morocco, from the people who I spoke with, Moroccan Sign Language is recognized as an official language. The UK are only just starting to recognize sign language as an official language. So there's a lot to speak to, and I'm thinking about how to bring that into this space. Anyway, I'm totally rambling. This poem is called Two Guns in the Sky for Daniel Harris. Just to explain a bit of context, British Sign Language and American Sign Language, even though spoken language is Anglo in both these places, sign language is completely different. I can't follow American Sign Language. Just to give an example, the alphabet in American Sign Language is all on one hand. Okay. In Britain, the sign language is all two. So good to tell you how completely different they are. In Morocco, I've been looking at some of the signs, looking at the letters, and most of it seems to be derived from French. But then there's other signs which I don't know what that is. That's so interesting. So I'm still kind of learning that. Anyway, when I was in the States about 2017, I saw this story about a man called Daniel Harris. And it was a story which was about 500 words on a CNN website. And I just was so moved by the story that I wanted to give volume to it whenever I had the opportunity. Because it wasn't really a major story as much as I thought it should be. And at the same day that I learned this story, I learned the word for alive in American Sign Language, which says alive. In British Sign Language, you say live, alive. So just again, talking about the two completely different handshapes of words. Two guns in the sky for Daniel Harris. When Daniel Harris stepped out of his car, the police officer was waiting, gun raised. I used the past tense because this is relevant to Daniel's language. Time is no future or past tense, is a present language. You are never more present than when a gun is pointed at. What language says this, if not sign? But the police officer saw hands waving in the air and fired, and Daniel dropped his hands, his chest bleeding out to the concrete meters from his home. When I'm in New York coffee house reading this news on my phone, when a black police officer walks in, 2 guns on her hips, my friend next to me reading the comment section, Black Lives Matter. And what could we sign or say out loud? And the last word I learned in American Sign Language was alive. Alive. Both thumbs pointing at the lower abdomen. Index fingers pointing up like 2 guns in the sky. Okay, so now the first book of poems I published in 2018, Perseverance. There are many ideas around perseverance, persevering as a concept, but also concretely, the perseverance is the name of the path. My dad used to drink it. In Hackney, where I was born and bred, which when I was growing up, a very poor part of the UK, one of the poorest, and now it's come gentrification, regeneration, and there were good things and bad things to that. But one of the most striking visual, poetic, I suppose, things about this path of perseverance is on the street it's on. It is the only business, the only establishment that is still there since I was a kid. Every other business on that whole road is gone, has changed. And I think about that every time. And you know, in hip hop, you know Biggie, right? Mm-hmm. Biggie's got a lyric who says something like "Word is born," and I always think about that when I see like the perseverance, persevering, and the meaning, where the meaning meets the scene almost. Anyway, I was left outside this pub as a kid. My dad would walk in and drink and be there for hours. I'm just standing there, and so this poem is about that memory. Perseverance. My dad's favorite singer is a man called Peter Tosh. So he opens the poem. The perseverance. Love is the man overstanding, Peter Tosh. I wait outside the perseverance. Just popping in here a minute, I've heard him say it many times before, like all kids with a drinking father, watching him disappear into smoke and laughter. There's no such thing as too much laughter, my father said. drinking in the perseverance until everything disappeared. I'm outside, counting minutes, waiting for the man, my father, to finish his shot and take me home before it gets dark. We've been here before. No such thing as too much laughter, unless you're my mother without my father, working weekends where the perseverance spits him out for a minute. He gives me 50p to make me disappear. 50p in my hand, I disappear like a coin in a parking meter before the time runs out. How many minutes will I lose listening to the laughter spilling from the perseverance while strangers ask, where is your father? I stare at the doors and say, my father is working. Strangers who don't disappear, but hug me for my perseverance. Dad said this will be the last time before of a TV spilled canned laughter, us on the sofa in his council flat, knowing any minute the yams will boil. Any minute I will eat again with my father, who cooks and serves laughter, good as any Jamaican who disappeared from the island I tasted before understanding our heat and perseverance. I still hear popping in for a minute. I see him disappear. We lose our fathers before we know it. I am still outside the perseverance, listening to the laughter. So this idea of, like, I suppose, poems and creativity, right? People often ask about like inspiration. I really do believe in creative energy. I really do see it as a kind of spirit. And when you channel it and you're aligned with it, whatever you create with it goes out into the world and it leads you. And whatever life it lives in the world is beyond you. I'm just saying that because I wrote this next poem for some students I had about 7 years ago. And these were 6 disadvantaged, difficult young people who just couldn't sit still, right? But what I realized with them is anytime they saw me writing, they would watch me and then they would start writing themselves. And I thought, okay, what I'll do before the lessons is I'll sit at the desk and I'll just be writing a poem. And they'll come in and see me do that. And then before the end of the lesson, I will share with them the poem that I've written. And I saw that work with this particular group of students. And so the poem that I'm about to perform came out of that. I showed it to them, and I kind of feel like if 15-year-old students from your community like the poem, it's a good sign. It's a good sign. So there's also a form. We'll talk about form if you ask, but yeah, anyway. It's called Jamaican British. Some people would deny that I'm Jamaican British. Nose Anglo, hair straight, no way I'm Jamaican British. They think I say I'm black when I say I'm Jamaican British, but the English kids at school made me choose Jamaican British. Half caste, half mule, house slave, Jamaican British, light skin, straight male, privileged Jamaican British. Eat the callaloo, jerk chicken, I'm Jamaican. British don't know how to serve our dishes, they've enslaved us. In school, I brought a boy of a lunch hall, Jamaican. At home, I told Dad that I hate them, all them Jamaicans, I'm British. He laughed, told me you cannot love sugar, then hate your sweetness, and took me straight to Jamaica, passport British. Cousins in Kingston taught me jar English, proud to have someone in their family British. Plantation lineage, World War service. How do I serve Jamaican British when knowing how to war is Jamaican British? Okay, how am I doing on time? You're great, but you need another biscuit. Yeah. I have no idea if this resonates with anybody. Okay. I'm just gonna do what I just do. Okay, it's been a few days. So this you know what? I think this is just good citizen. I feel like can we like talk? I want to know like who I'm talking. You know what I mean? Like I'm in a different context, so I don't know if this is what people want to hear. I don't know if this is like a thing. So I just feel like maybe I should just be like, hey, what would you like?
You go.
Let's have another discussion. We can get to know each other. And let's go.
Yeah.
Whatever you feel at.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know why my brain is doing like, stop.
If you feel comfortable, stop. I think if you feel comfortable reading more poetry,
I can only speak for myself, but I love your work. I love listening to you read.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
And it's for you guys, really, because just listening to Raymond's poem about is he British, is he Jamaican, this idea of identity. Yeah. One of the things about Morocco, Morocco is it's a melting pot, it's a mix of lots of different people. You're Africans, Muslims. How many of you see yourselves as Arabs, or are you Berbers, are you indigenous peoples? Yeah, you know, did that mean anything to you in terms of identity? Are you British? You know, so how do you resolve your identity?
You go through history, also it's very maybe the most century, and it's not only empathy and Arab, but not only empathy and Arab, where and then we see we are many things. So yeah, it's this identity is problematic to us too. Are we Arabs? Are we Amazigh? Are we whatever it is? So what makes us unified.
Actually, maybe that's going to give Raymond the break.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe I'll take you with me, and then if you guys will have some, also has amazing poetry to share with you all.
Yeah.
Yes, come on, I have some for you downstairs.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes.
We want to hear outside.
Yeah, we do. Oh. Can you bring food here?
Hello, everybody. Again, I'm thanking Tony and Farah for their excellent work at the British Council, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you very much for this encounter with a great work. And I never, ever flatter any artist or writer if I don't feel it. In fact, absolutely, very quick anecdote. I am to present someone who is a sociologist, who was a great diplomat and everything. And she's published 3 collections of poetry. But I read all of them, and I could not find one poem. I'm not going to present. Okay, this is one thing we agreed upon, and it is authenticity in poetry. And okay, I'm gonna be kind of quick. My first song, yes, it is a song, but it moves from here. It's entitled The Sound of the African Queen. I look like an African queen. I sing like a lady from the cliff. And I've got a world of music within. At times, life is a paradise. At times, only a game of dice. And this whole world, America's dice. I look like an African queen. I sing like a lady from Brooklyn, and earth is waiting for me from within. So I'm leaving like an African queen, singing like a lady from Brooklyn, the world of joy I have within. I'm going to move to my relationship with England, because we're Morocco and England. And first time I went to London, I was a student, and we were at home. The second time I went, that was back in 1976, when I was born. You were. Yeah, you were. Okay. And my second trip to London, to England, was I was invited as a Moroccan poet who writes in English at a program entitled Writing on the Wall, about Hadrian's Wall, where close to 1,900 years ago, there were Moroccans with, from the north, with Emperor Hadrian, Roman Emperor Hadrian. They were building the Hadrian Wall with Hadrian. So I was invited through the British Council because they were looking for a Moroccan poet to write in English. And this little poem, I wrote exactly the day where there were bombings in Casablanca. And all of a sudden I said, what is the deadline? And I haven't written the poem. So I sat down and I wrote this. And it is addressed to Emperor Hadrian. I love your wall, Hadrian, not the one you built and garrisoned with colorful men from around the Mediterranean, but its full of remnants, strong symbols of the vulnerability of all empires. I love your wall, Hadrian, for the free people who refused it and used it. Better than a boundary, it is now a pleasant line of leisure and poetry. If the emperor is angry, let the poet rejoice, because Hadrian was a poet. But people studied in Scotland. So the border is exactly the border. Hadrian's Wall is the border between Scotland and England. And I wrote this while I was there on this writing residency. On the border, being on the border, on the edge, on the verge, on the brink, on the brim, on the rim, on the fringe, on the coast, on the bank of Scotland, finding an open door. No boundaries, no barriers, no pillar of Hercules to crush, no Rubicon to cross. Only a few stones walk forth in a dreamlike nature. Now veiling mist, now blooming in the sun. And people, all the Grahams and the Bells and the Ogles and the Pringles and the Armstrongs and the Robsons and the Nixons and the Dixons and the Scotts and the Elliots, the Ridleys and the Beattys. All these and other rivals, once dreaded warriors, now peaceful farmers or half-debtors, joined for ales or else in King's Arms pub, with no arms but darts to play and jokes to share. I felt tempted in this land teeming with ghosts to ask Hadrian's soul, perhaps present and invisible in some corner of this pub, where his fort once stood, ask his 2,000-year-old soul about people and barriers. And I could almost sense a smile on his face as he would tell me, poets and poetry, for me, history's ephemeral vanity and the strength of life over stones. And at the self moment, I was building walls. And Hadrian's soul suddenly vanished as Lawrence, in his Scottish kilt, gave vent to a cry of joy. He had won the dark gate. In my next poem, I just discovered, in fact, 2 days ago that I had written this poem last year. And it is about, it is an echo to Raymond's poem on, and maybe an answer from a Moroccan to your question. And the poem is entitled The Jazz Effect. Beware of mathematics, where their exactness is too relative. $1 plus $1 will never give you $3. But a man and a woman will give you 10 children. One single pot can be sown and sprout in a multitude of minds. A handful of brains can result into a generous crop. One culture added to another culture will give you one culture. What cultures don't meet? Well, ask Langston Hughes and all the jazz musicians how their poetry and music were born in white America to enchant the world. Reach out to my hand, friend. We are bridge builders, and lots of borders are. Borders and boundaries and how to erase them. This is a real defect. I was a student, I was probably your age. I was a student, I was in Paris, and I was on the stand. It was a very beautiful spring day, and I heard this voice behind me. And the guy said, "Excuse me, speak English." And we talked about 2 hours. No Facebook, no nothing. It's just very, and poetry is ephemeral. It's type of meetings that, and it's entitled The Outcast. Excuse me, do you speak English? He was tall, black, handsome, and sad. Sadness flowing from his eyes like a spring of tears shrouded his whole being. His question rang out as a last resort of a wretched soul, a cry to my dark skin, this very Parisian culture. Yes, I do. And relief flashed beyond the long-born melancholy of his eyes. No deceiving woman-hunting game. Relief, simple, profound relief. For I was dark, and I could listen. Please, I just would like to talk. And he talked, his voice like the ancient mariners for centuries of suffering. I'm an African American. I'm the son of blind hatred assailing my people's mind. I am the son of humiliation and endurance with the soul sin in my black skin. I'm an African American, and I, as a child, fleeing a mad mother, have crossed back the ocean in pursuit of an ancient dream. To France he came. Paris, what a magic name. France, or French. Paris, what a magic name, where freedom was won, where freedom is done. France, the French, so fast, so close. He spoke, and his low-spirited words, like poison, slowly invaded my soul. He spoke, and my heart sank in my breast like a heavy stone. He spoke, he stared. I shivered in the strength of his love.
If you're on a roll, it's a double roll. We can open a conversation
Yeah.
in the post. Yeah.
How about poem on Facebook? Of course, you don't even say Facebook, but you call it the Book of Faces. That can't sue me. They put, in fact, I wrote it in Derija before. I wrote it in both Derija and but I have it here in English. The Book of Faces. They put your face down in the Book of Faces. No more secrets, no more intimacy. Uncovered, you give in everything. No need for a rod, no need for torture. This is what I ate and this is what I drank. This is my wife and this is my friend. This is my opinion on politics and politicians and this is and this is and this is. They put your face down on the Book of Faces. They conceived a trap and named it Freedom Market. And mindless you dive in. They put your face down on the book, in the Book of Faces. Started from the world you air, a driven puppet with a raving mind. You flee reality and jump into their hands. They put your face down in the Book of Faces. They put our faces down in the Book of Faces, the Book of Faces, the Book of Faces. For getting together this last poem about words, and this is what links us with words. أتتكلم العربية سنسى شكيت أتمدبر التدريب يبريسي فروسكي يلاتي إلينيكا. Do you speak English? Hablas español? Parlez-vous français? Sprechen Sie Deutsch? 9. Same question in 9 languages. In Arabic, we say we all the children of 9 months in a mother's womb. So this is why I chose different writings and different languages. What are words? Sounds, bound by meaning, agreed upon by people, clustered on the earth of a fluid planet. What are words? Invisible ghosts, roving among human beings, messengers and actors, roaming in and out of our brain, linking us in a fragile yet strong chain. What are words? Aerial fairies, weaving love and hate, joy and sorrow, poverty and wealth, honesty and treachery, the same tongue before whisper, cry.
So Ray's had a sugar food intake. So never let it be said that the British Council starve their artists. Don't write that headline. What we're going to do, Ray is going to read a couple of poems later, but first we want to just start a conversation between the two of you, open it up to everybody else, and then Ray will finish with a couple of more poems. I'm going to ask you first of all, Hafsa, I mean, what feelings are evoked by Raymond's poetry? You've heard him read today, but I know you spent some time preparing for today, familiarizing yourself with words. What does it say to you?
Well, when I was told British poet, I didn't know. And when I was asked to participate, then when I received these poems, I realized there was something, like we share Africa. So I said, oh, okay. And then I read, when I received these poems and read them, this is how I chose those poems. Facebook for fun. one, but the poems I chose, because I have tons of poems, but those I chose, it's after having read his very deep poems. You know, there's great authenticity that I felt immediately, and that was confirmed yesterday, the day we met, the minute we met. This, I think the main word what makes us is authenticity. Words that both Ray and I are made of flesh. They're not just words. They're like, in Arabic it says that it's made of blood and flesh and suffering, and that's what made poetry.
Now, Ray, you're at a disadvantage because you haven't been able to study abstract poetry. Because Ray is, you've looked at some, but Ray is also a new father. He's left his. This is the first time that you've heard. I mean, perhaps just heard you read twice last night and today. But it's the first time you listened to stuff.
I mean, I resonate with you instantly, and I felt that you, as a spirit, embodied poetry. I felt that again on the page, and then even more reading you and seeing, words in the flesh being delivered. And complications are good for poetry.
Yes,
because it's talk about a lineage of a word, and a lineage of blood, and a lineage of family. And they're talking about Africa, and then they're talking about Europe. But then the Caribbean connection that's there. And then something that was interesting to me coming to Morocco was I come across that few people here who don't identify as Africans. And in Jamaica, there are a lot of Jamaicans who don't identify as Africans. There's a lot of anti-blackness, a lot of anti-Africanness, and a lot of it is like internalized. And I sense that how poetry is relative, our relatives, in a way that I guess we're trying to unearth that or bring that to people. We want that to be discussed. We want that to be not simplified, but like discussed. And I don't think it's one of those things where an identity is something which is nurtured. You can your sense of self changes as you get older, as you move through the world, and you have new experiences, you go to new places, you meet new people, you have new relationships. And that's one of the, in some ways, that's a disadvantage of writing a book, which is a static thing that exists in a time and a place. I wrote this book the months after my dad passed away. We were very close, and I was writing every night. I was writing. All of the poems were about my dad, and I was trying to find the language to articulate who I was becoming without that anchor that was my father. And we had a complicated relationship. I think if I came up with one of these poems, how wonderful and great, people would see through that. So there's something that's, you can't be honest without honoring complexity. And so something I sense and see and feel in your work, you told me earlier that the poet, the one who feels.
Exactly, in Arabic.
And it's such an honor to be in a space of storytellers, because I feel like we're also akin to storytellers. Something to say.
Have we got any? Does anybody online? I'm sure I can see some storytellers there. or in the room, do you have any, I mean, just shout out online if you've got any thoughts, questions, reactions. Just steal the floor. We'll stay quiet and listen to you.
I'm
Yeah.
kind of interested in that whole North African aspect of, but I mean, when I performed in Algeria and stuff, and the people saying, well, I'm not this and I'm not that, that whole mix of cultures is just across North Africa. And again, in Britain, as we, as it comes, like my own grandson's Jamaican grandfather, and I'm the other granddad. There's this commonality that's going on between you two, and I'm kind of interested in that.
Yes, I mean, this is something you feel right away. This is the power of poetry. I don't think you can lie with poetry, with real poetry. You cannot lie. It's there or it's not there. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yes. And you're talking about suffering. Okay. I have an identity poem where I start like this. When I was young, when I was 3, away from home, they did send me. Through human jungle I did roam till I was bitten by treachery. But suffering is definitely, if you can make of it matter, if you can find harmony to, distance from that suffering without forgetting it, make beautiful poetry and authentic poetry out of it.
Yeah, so to respond to that, I guess maybe that my practice, I suppose, academically is in kind of art therapy, actually. My pedagogy is emotional literacy, which means how do I help facilitate emotional histories and get that to be something that people share of themselves. It's been decades of research done which shows how better quality the learning is when you feel emotionally invested, when you feel also seen, understood, heard. And this element of teaching, of education, is often undervalued and overlooked. And so part of my work as well for the past 7-8 years has been trying to reassess and revalue that actually the kind of environments that we find ourselves in. But I generally think that classrooms are one of the most streamlined, power-centered that can bring about real, lasting social change. I don't think it's naive to say that. I feel the same way about prisons. Going to prisons all over the UK, all over different parts of the world, and I often see a similar kind of dynamic, almost like a classroom dynamic, a school kind of thing, of like people who have made decisions in their lives and have sat with those actions for a long time, and they're not often heard or understood, or the circumstances that led to things like crime. That's a whole other thing.
Not necessarily crime. I'd like to say something about that. Here in Morocco, we had some dark period where we had political prisoners, and then with the reign of the monarchy, there was a voice given to people, and there's been a lot of writing from one of the founders of American poetry, one of who wrote about his poetry and everything. So yes, it is can be very sensitive to what is happening in prisons of the world. I have said just a while ago, you said globalizing my understanding of deafness, right? And as you said that, I thought of Bob Dylan. How many ears must this one man have to hear that too many people have died? So, I mean, are we people who are supposed to be hearing people? Do we really hear? Is my question. And also, Ralph Ellison, I thought at the same, exactly at the same moment, Ralph Ellison, when he says, I'm invisible, the invisible man, I'm invisible. No, I'm not some ectoplasm from Hollywood or some spooky character. I'm invisible because people refuse to see me. And so, and since we are in Morocco, in our religious book, there's a lot of insistence on people who have ear and do not hear, people who have eyes and there's a difference between sight, basar, sight, and basira, which is almost the same language, but just a bit apart. So it's not only physical deafness.
Yeah.
Okay. That was my first question.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Everybody.
anyone in the room burst in to actually see you guys?
I guess I want to say something. I mean, it's the relationship. I mean, as far as storytelling and poetry are concerned. I
I'm
mean,
a storyteller too.
oh yeah, I mean, we're all storytellers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We just tell stories differently. But I believe that the how it was promoted, I mean, storytelling and poetry, it goes back to the starting of the Sufi movement, but not with Muslims. I mean, Sufism started way back before Islam. So Sufi people are the ones who really cherish storytelling and poetry because it is believed that they use it as means of transition. Sufi people, they transmit their messages, their values through two things: poetry, so matiyatain in Arabic. Matiyat share the approach of poetry and the approach of storytelling. So instead of just sending teachers who will teach about values, morals, on how to elevate yourself, to be under personal growth, if we shall say, and also to promote Arabic language, they will use storytelling and also poetry. Why? Because poetry and storytelling are similar in something because they really touch the soul. I mean, words just go beyond the meaning. I mean, just the combination of words and poetry and also in storytelling. They go and they deal with deep psychological, personal issues within an individual. And I believe nowadays that, I mean, a storyteller can heal someone more than a psychologist will do. And also same for a poet. So also I have this question. Is it really helpful for people to read poetry, dive into poetry as a means of salvation, to go out of something like being imprisoned anymore?
Great question. Yeah. Who wants to answer that? Is
So
poetry a means
there's
of
two
salvation?
questions to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why poetry is sort of how could it be a choice for salvation? I think there's so many ways to answer this, right? But I think one of the things I've been thinking about is how the practice of poetry is to me a kind of meditation, a kind of just a ritual. It is a way to tune in to the world and people around you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a kind of noticing, stops you, and you have to, to write down, to find a place where you can internally find somewhere to write down something remembered, something felt, a question. These are all kind of ritualistic acts. Therefore, I believe that this practice is aligned with a spiritual kind of, so you can call it spiritual act, maybe at this most, but I think you can also do it, a quest for insight.
Quest for insight is fun. But also, since we have students here, I really advise you to read. It's on the internet, and it's by one of the fantastic British poets, Shelley. And Shelley, we're talking about spirituality. Shelley was thrown out of Oxford because he wrote, and you can also find that, The Necessity of Atheism. But also, I worked on my PhD on Shelley, so I read everything by Shelley. No, but I advise you to read, if you're interested in poetry, is A Defense of Poetry. And that's a 30-page thing. It's not, and it's very philosophical. You know, Shelley was, he died 1 week before he was 30. A very young poet, but he spoke 7 languages. He started to learn Arabic, speak language. But at the end, the last sentence on this text, you know, A Defense of Poetry, he says poets are and acknowledged legislators of the world. So think about that.
Yeah. I mean, I remember right now someone, I mean, I watched that video in a conference that say, I mean, there is someone who defends also poets. And he said, I mean, if people listen to poets,
poetry.
I mean, to poets, I mean, he said to poets. So he said that if people listen to poets and stop listening to politicians, the world would be a better place.
Young people, any you question the panic? You've got a question. Go on.
Hello everyone. First of all, hello again to the people that I couldn't bring in. I have a question. When you talked about suffering and everything, is suffering and pain the most important part of an artist, or is it, or it could be like especially a poet or something? But I've heard a lot of stories, especially from all of artists. It could be painters, it could be writers, it could be singers, poets. They all come from a place where they felt some extreme pain and they had trauma and they had all of that psychological, like it was pain, it was suffering, and that's where they came from. So I'm wondering if that's the biggest motive for artists.
Well, you can have pain without being a poet or an artist.
Yeah, but
Is it necessary prerequisite to use art?
The capacity of perception is important. You can, right? If you deal with that suffering. Okay, as I said, I was sent away when I was 3 years old, and I had to live 10 years, you know, in the difficult things and everything. But today, just about 15 days ago, my yoga teacher, we had a yoga session, and she says, "Well, think about something you regret." I started thinking and thinking, and if I tell you the story of my life, you'd cry. But I started thinking and thinking, and I said, I don't regret. See, that distance that you have with your suffering, and that suffering that you use as a matter, as something to work on and to advance. You know, Amin Malouf came to Casablanca one day, and he had written the Périple de Baldassare. And I was listening to him, great writer, many languages. And I said, you know, as a Lebanese, you know, you're very calm and very, you know, but quite a rebel. And he smiled and he told me in French, he said, J'ai envie de cogner sur les tables parfois, c'est vrai. Je mets ma rage dans le carburateur et j'avance. I feel like, banging on the table sometimes, but put my rage in for the car. So this is how you deal with your rage, how you deal with your suffering, how you deal with everything around you and make poetry. That's
Great. What about you, Ray?
Yeah.
I think that there is a danger of romanticizing suffering.
Yes.
I personally don't think it is a prerequisite for creativity. Creativity is about how you see the world. It's like what you said about a depth of feeling and a depth of perception.
Exactly.
They align. You know, there's a relationship, and so one of the, I suppose, I want to use the word cures, but one of the lenses in which I think provides a lot of creativity is the mode of gratitude. So we're talking about Sufi poetry, you know, spent all the Rumi and the Hafez, the mode of it is always gratitude. It's always I see what I'm thankful for. Look at the sky, the color of this sky. What do we do with a love like that? You know, and Hafez had followers because he had a voice. He recited loud poetry, and people heard him as he was walking. And they, who's that? You know, Hafez didn't kind of go out and promote himself, other than he just announced.
Yes.
He announced, in a way, the beauty and the mysticism of life, and people gravitated towards that. And I think that, I don't know, that's one example of someone who I think achieved lasting, deep, meaningful art without necessarily leaning, you know, on the page, even though, you know, there is, you know, he was exiled, he had a hard life.
Gratitude.
Yes, gratitude.
Is a key word. Yes.
There's a poet called Ross Gay who kept this gratitude journal for 1 year, and every day he just wrote one thing he was grateful for.
Oh, nice.
And then he published it in a book. The book is called The Book of Delights, and it's probably the book I go back to the most at the moment. Because it's not, again, it's not, he talks about things like just small things, like, you know, like there's a piece where it says, on loitering, I saw the word loitering, and he's musing on what loitering is. So, and he, as a black man in America, is like, okay, cool, I know the code of like no loitering, and what and how that word says something different to different people in a space. So he just meditates on that, and then he notices that by the sign there's flowers growing, and so he just chooses to loiter by the flowers, and he creates this image of just, I stopped, I saw, I moved on, you know, and I'm grateful that I did that. So there's like, you know, I'm just offering that as a way to say, yes, pain, yes, it hurts, yes, tragedy. There's something very compelling and powerful about that, but also gratitude, but also joy.
I'll just take the butt. I'll take the butt.
You do that, and Ray then will move to your, okay, so this is your cue after Axel's.
Yeah, just one word to this lady about suffering. As we say, share, you know, it doesn't have to be your suffering. Other people's suffering that makes you suffer, and that makes you write about suffering. But I just wanted to show you this, and I love how this is probably the poet. I love how when it rains, plants grow through concrete. And Ray is one of those plants.
Yeah. So one of the
why I asked about something, because there's always like, for example, if we cannot appreciate good without evil,
Yes,
appreciate something without the other thing. Not trying to romanticize pain or something. That's a horrible thing to do because it just plays in your mind, just makes you think that doing horrible things to, for example, why I said that because there are some people, for example, that makes jokes of, rape jokes and stuff like that, and they think that's something to do. Like, I'm not trying to be that person. Why I asked that question because I've heard there is a theory. I don't really remember where I read it, but they said that artists always come from a place of suffering. Even the one you talked about like who was grateful for the things and like he wrote that volume. That's it's a volume, isn't it? About being grateful for a lot of things. He came from pain. He was exiled. But that's like a fuel to the inspiration that makes an artist an artist. Because there's some people who are able to express themselves through words, through for example, painters, through canvas and stuff like that. And there are some people who can do that. So artists, in my opinion, I still think that pain actually fuels that inspiration, fuels that art. So
they do it in different ways, you can be an artist in cooking, there are even, our mothers and grandmothers were great artists, but they didn't have the word to say it. But yeah. Okay,
right.
Since we're talking about pain, as a English studies student, I said as a English studies student majored in literature, we're doing a lot of poetry, and it seems to me that we have this gloomy vibe. Now we're doing more poetry, this strange meeting by Owen. Thank God poetry is diverse. I'm really happy.
Have a look at that and the news on Ukraine.
So maybe that's why
I had a poem that I didn't want because it's hard, I didn't want to read, but I faced a gun. I faced a machine gun when I was 9 years old. And even then, I was 9 years old. The French soldier, was probably 18, but he looked so young that I felt sorry for him. And because I felt sorry for him, I'm still alive.
Wow. So a couple more poems.
Yes.
Yeah. Quick one.
I think there's a choose writing poetry. So I always have this question: what is that idea that is worth?
That is worth
an idea that is worth feeling. How do you choose? Or how do you pick and choose?
How do you choose?
I think we're chosen.
Yeah, there's an element of that. I feel, like I say, like it's on one hand, it's a practice again. So like if you write something, you don't know what you're going to write, you don't know what's going to happen as you live your life. But then on another hand, there's sometimes you see something, you hear something, you feel something, you have to write it.
Right there.
And that's what I was saying about like the creativity being an energy. Yeah. And I said earlier about the word enthusiasm being responding to the God that's within you. So if you align, I love the word align. If you're aligned with that, then you trust whatever feeling it is that pushes you or gives you the energy to write or create. And yeah, that's a practice. I'll read a couple poems from this book, I guess, because we've been talking about painting. I wish I could show it to you, but there's I lived in the south of the States, place called New Orleans, my wife for a year. And New Orleans is like no other part of America, you know. It's and my wife is an art conservator actually, so her job is to look after paintings and talk art material, whatever. Like she's all about preservation of material. So we've had so many fascinating conversations about that. But I love going to art exhibitions with her. It's a way that her perspective on say, she would look at a painting and she would say, okay, this color here, the green here will be the first color on this painting to deteriorate. Okay, that's going to be a difficult piece to preserve. People here know the artist Basquiat.
Yes.
With the crown, Basquiat. Yeah, so we went to a Basquiat exhibition in London, and it was heartbreaking to actually be with her. She was like, this stuff can't be preserved. This is only going to live for about 30 more years until it's going to have to be retouched to the point where Basquiat's hands have gone. He would no longer be the person that had touched his work, because Basquiat actually died really young, and his materials weren't actually pretty cheap material. So, and now he's like praised, and every time you show the work, you've got this really intense light on it. There's a certain way to present work. Anyway, I left that exhibition so sad. But I share that story to say that I was in New Orleans, and we went to this art gallery called the Historic New Orleans Collection. And I walked in there and saw this huge canvas. I wish you can Google it. If people are watching at home, you can Google plantation burial, 1860, oil on canvas by, I think people have got now.
No, it's just the battery.
Battery. Okay. These were coming to the end. Yeah. So we looked at this painting, and in it you see a creature, a man standing in the middle of the painting, and they're burying someone in the woods. All the people that are around are black, and then the people that are in the periphery are white. So you see, for example, like a couple who were probably like the owners of the plantation, and then you see a man on a horse, probably a slave driver. But what's its centers is the people on the plantation, enslaved people, burying one of their own. And so we were looking at that, and then when I saw the person who painted this painting, was called John Antrobus, I knew that I was looking at an ancestor of mine who in 1860 had left England, traveled around Louisiana, the south of America, seen for himself slavery, plantations, seen this and painted it, and it's preserved. And it was such a moment that I had no idea about this. And then Tabitha, my wife, she comes in and she says, the way that they've painted skin of the black men, the black people that are at this burial, that is skin, that color is going to be the first thing to deteriorate on this painting. And for me, that says something about value. And you know what I said earlier about word is born, and why we're talking about being careful with your language, because you manifest what you say and what you think. I think that is one way in which, like, the way we value life and whose life is valuable, it's still perpetuated. It's in the fabric of our lives. And so anyway, I had this whole experience looking at this painting, and I wrote this poem about it. Plantation Paint. Tabitha, the art conservator, squints at the color, tells me the paint depicting the black of these men huddled for a burial will decay before the cypress trees surrounding them will decay. There are several kinds of black, she says, and the cypress trees surrounding them is all I see as we stand alive in this otherwise empty gallery. Why am I like this? What am I like? Who does it matter to? All details question my way of seeing. I worry what kind of black would mark me. I am not the paint made from vine twigs or burnt shells. I am not the lamp full of oil. Tabitha, tell me how you paint me. Tell me if I'm closer to the white painter with my name than I am the black preacher, his hands wide to the sky, the mahogany vault of heaven. Sorry, but you know by now that I can't mention trees without every shade of my family appearing and disappearing.
Wow.
You said you wanted to do two, but how are we on time?
We should back it up, I think.
Yeah.
No, it was Ray said he wanted to do two.
No.
Listen, yeah, I agree. We've done that, but can I just thank the World Storytelling Cafe for hosting this? I don't know if Mike and John. Thank you, the audience, for coming. But last, by no means least, what a wonderful conversation, honestly. Lovely poetry and just the connection and the exchange. It moved me, and I'm sure then for everyone else. So thank you both for bearing your souls, poetic souls. Thank you. Let's give them a thank you, Steve, for this creation. Well, that storytelling picturesque.
I've got that picture up that you were talking about, the painting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that.
Is that the painting? I'll show you the painting.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the painting.
The methodical plantation 8.
All right, any, Mike, John, do you want to wrap up?
Well, I just want to thank, first of all, the British Council, obviously, and Tony and everyone that's organised this, but especially Hafsa and Raymond, who have given us such a brilliant evening, and it is wonderful. So thank you. We're very honoured to have you at the cafe. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye, John.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you, John.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. It's true.
Bye.